And I will be presenting on the effects of screen time on adolescents. Today, adolescents live in a world where screens are a big part of their daily lives. From smartphones and tablets to computers and televisions, screens provide lots of entertainment, information, and social interaction. However, the widespread use of screen time among adolescents has raised concerns regarding its impact on their well-being. While screens may offer some developmental and psychological benefits, excessive screen time has been associated with negative effects on mental health, cognitive development, and language development. When it comes to screen time, some studies show that there may be some positive developmental and psychological benefits, stating, beginning at about 2 years old, quality TV, well-designed age-appropriate programs with specific educational goals can provide an additional route to early language and literacy for children. In addition to this, there's increasing evidence that interactive learn-to-read apps can help with literacy and word recognition. Appropriate screen time can help assist children in learning empathy and respect and can be used to calm a child who is overexcited or distressed. Despite these positives, screen time is highly addictive, especially when small children become adolescents. The addictiveness of screen time has negative effects on many areas, such as cognitive development and decision-making skills. Dr. Catherine Lorenz from Upper Valley Medicine says, the prefrontal cortex and dopamine pleasure pathways are essential in understanding how screens are addictive. The prefrontal cortex regulates our thoughts, actions, and emotions. This part of the brain is growing until the early 20s, causing children not to have fully developed self-regulation skills. This causes adolescents to be highly prone to obsessive and addictive behavior. A study called Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development revealed that some kids who use screens more than 7 hours a day have a thinner cortex than those who use screens less. A thicker prefrontal cortex is associated with better decision-making and executive performance. Another significant effect of screen time is stimulating reward and dopamine pathways. Dopamine is the key neurotransmitter involved in pleasure. Although not as intense as a hit of cocaine, positive social stimuli from your phone will similarly result in a release of dopamine. When reward pathways are overused, they become less sensitive and more stimulation is needed to experience joy. Meanwhile, dopamine is also critical for focus and motivation, so even small changes in dopamine sensitivity can wreak havoc on how an adolescent feels and functions. One scientific concept that helps demonstrate how addiction to screen time affects our learning and cognitive ability is working memory. Working memory is described as the small amount of information that can be held in mind and used in the execution of cognitive tasks. In contrast with long-term memory, the vast amount of information saved in one's life. In The Shallows by David Carr, he says, the depth of our intelligence hinges on our ability to transfer information from our working memory to long-term memory. The problem with this is that our working memory can only hold so much information, unlike our long-term holding tank. Because of this, trying to transfer information from working memory to long-term memory in the internet's chaotic environment is, to use Carr's metaphor, like transferring water blasting from a room full of faucets into a bathtub using just a thimble as your tool. The overload of incoming information, also known as cognitive load, makes it difficult to tell the difference between important information and irrelevant information, a problem many studies link to ADHD. Excessive screen time among adolescents has been linked to many effects on their language development. Studies from PubMed Central found that screen time can negatively affect language acquisition and early language development. Spending extended periods in front of screens often replaces crucial face-to-face interaction and reduces opportunities for verbal communication. This lack of meaningful conversation can impede vocabulary development and conversational skills. Furthermore, some studies have also found that increased screen time can lead to decreased attention spans and diminished cognitive abilities, making it more challenging for adolescents to comprehend language structures and engage in critical thinking. A landmark National Institute of Health study that began in 2018 found that children who spend more than 2 hours a day on screen time activities scored lower on language and thinking tests. Thus, it is very important for parents and teachers to monitor and limit screen time to support healthy language development among adolescents. Screen time did not always need to be monitored, as it has evolved dramatically throughout history. The concept of screen time goes back to the early 20th century with the invention of the television, which revolutionized entertainment. As television sets became common in households, families began spending an increasing amount of time in front of screens, leading to concerns about daily routines and social interactions. The last half of the 20th century saw the rise of personal computers and video game consoles, further expanding opportunities for screen-based activities. With the invention of the internet in the late 20th century and the rise of the smartphones in the 21st century, screen time has become more portable than ever. As technology has evolved, so has the experience. Newer forms of screen time are tailored specifically for the viewer, making them much more addictive. The exploitation of attention may raise ethical concerns about the manipulation of adolescent behavior by tech companies and advertisers. According to information technology scholar Daniel Susser from Penn State University, online manipulation is the use of information technology to covertly influence another person's decision-making by targeting and exploiting their decision-making vulnerabilities. The availability of personal information in the digital age has made online manipulation much more common. The collection and analysis of user data play a crucial role in manipulating online consumer behavior. The experience is tailored specifically for users to stay engaged with these platforms, often leading to social media addiction. This has proven to be harmful, especially for adolescents, with data showing increases in mental health problems such as depression and anxiety. Also, the persuasiveness of screen time raises questions about parental responsibility and how parents should balance their children's screen time with healthy lifestyle choices. These ethical and moral issues of screen time are widespread, and a few countries have chosen to take initiative on the issue. Most countries are similar to the US and have no legislation on screen time. However, Taiwan, China, and South Korea have all made laws against screen time. In 2015, Taiwan passed the Child and Youth Welfare and Protection Act, which expanded existing legislation to allow the government to fine parents of children under 18 who are using electronic devices for extended periods. Citing health concerns, the Taiwanese government can fine parents up to $1,500 if their child's use of electronic device exceeds a reasonable time. Now, excess screen time is considered to be the equivalent of smoking, drinking, and using drugs in these countries. In the US, however, no legislation limits children's screen time. Screen time in the US is increasing with each generation, just as it is globally. In the US, the daily average of screen time is around 7 hours and 4 minutes, just slightly higher than the world average. However, Gen Z averages about 9 hours of screen time daily. Even more than this, teenagers from low-income houses are found to spend an average of 9 hours and 19 minutes on their screens each day, 2 hours and 13 minutes longer than the average from high-income houses. For low-income users, screen media is much cheaper than most other activities. In Northern California, a study by Kaiser Permanente surveyed 228 parent-child pairs. They found total screen time for entertainment and education, but not for remote schooling, increased by an average of 1.75 hours per day from the pre-pandemic period to the early pandemic. In the later pandemic period, screen time dropped slightly, but remained on average 1.1 hours per day higher when most in-person school restrictions were lifted. The study also found a significant increase in the percentage of children ages 4 to 12 who have a social media account, rising from 4.4% before the pandemic to 11.2% in the latter part of the pandemic, even though most platforms have a minimum age of 13. When it comes to religions, Calvinist, Wesleyan, Orthodox, and Catholic denominations all have similar views on screen time. Each denomination's perspective on screen time varies among the theological traditions, but all have underlying themes. Calvinists believe in predestination and believe that they need to work out their salvation. Therefore, Calvinists may view screen time as distracting individuals from their spiritual duties when they should instead be prioritizing one's relationship with God over distractions. Wesleyan believers tend to be more conservative in their teachings. They might approach screen time with a focus on self-discipline, encouraging individuals to use technology responsibly and in ways that align with their values. The Orthodox Church follows the Old Testament practice of having prayers according to the hours of the day, and may emphasize the need for balance, seeing screen time as a hindrance to their life that is centered on prayer and spiritual practices. Catholics believe that people have a right and a duty to participate in society, seeking together the common good and well-being of all, especially the poor and vulnerable. Catholics may approach screen time with a similar caution, encouraging individuals to consider how to use their screen habits, impact their relationships. Each denomination may have slightly different reasons for their views on screen time, but the importance of mindfulness, moderation, and spiritual growth is the same. When it comes to what the Bible says about screen time, Christians tend to believe that as long as they ignore the bad stuff, screen time is okay. But even good screen content can have a negative impact on faith, becoming the objects of our worship. Jesus says in Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other." In addition to this, Exodus 20:4-5 says, "You must not make any idols. Don't make any statues or pictures of anything up in the sky, or of anything down on the earth, or anything down in the water. Don't worship or serve idols of any kind, because I, the Lord, am your God." Anything that is used 9 hours a day can be described as an idol, and most Christians spend the vast majority of their free time with screens, not God. 1 Corinthians 6:19-20 says, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies." Christians need to consider how to use their time, bodies, and minds as image bearers of God. One way to do this is by attempting a media fast. Fasting helps to recognize that the things humans are dependent on are gifts from God. Another aspect of this is that young adults should balance their online time with reading, physical activity, chores, and playtime, making technology one aspect of their life rather than the only activity. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." This means that people must ask if they are using their technology for the glory of God. If the content is spiritually nutritious, then the minds and hearts will benefit. Another important step is being aware of avoidance. When faced with a difficult chore, project, or conversation, it is easy to turn to smartphones or a tablet to get your mind to think about something else. But this is an unhealthy form of escapism, and it only harms people. You must be aware of the tendency to use technology to get out of what God has given us to do. Finally, keeping screens out of the bedroom will help improve sleep, which will help improve mood, productivity, and the ability to focus. Having an improved mood will help you become more patient, kind, and loving to others, just as Jesus teaches. In the end, it is important for Christian communities to recognize the potential that screens have, as well as the negatives. Screens are highly addictive and can have long-lasting effects on mental health, cognitive development, and language development. There are many steps that Christians can take to help reduce screen time and, in turn, these harmful effects. Some of these steps include keeping electronics out of the bedroom and being aware of avoidance. By raising children with the values of discernment and moderation, adolescents can better navigate screens and the internet with an understanding of their purpose in God's plan. And these are my sources. Thank you.